What is the IT strategy for the National Science Foundation, NSF? How is it modernizing its IT? And what is NSF doing to secure its systems and infrastructure? I'll explore these questions and so much more with my very special guest, Dorothy Aronson, Chief Information Officer and Chief Data Officer at the National Science Foundation. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about your duties and responsibilities at NSF.
It's a great question. And I wish I had more solid footing on this right now, but my job is also in the moment changing. Again, with the growth of the agencies, this is really a tremendous moment for both IT and data. So in the past several years, 5 years, I've been both the CIO and the Chief Data Officer. Before that, I was originally just the CIO. Before that, I just ran the DIS organization. So I've gone from running DIS to running IT to running IT and data. And what we're doing now, because of this exponential growth in the agency, we're going to create a whole office that is just dedicated to IT and data. And right now, the agency is working to hire the director of that office. And then I will be moving strictly over to focus on data. So the IT organization is a microcosm of what's happening at the NSF at large, which is we're growing and expanding. So my objective is to keep all of that going during this period of change.
Yeah. When I think of your roles and how they have evolved at NSF, I'm wondering, can you share with us some of the top challenges or management challenges or otherwise that you faced and how you sought to address those challenges?
That's a great question. Thank you. So all of my challenges fall under managing change, all of them, because there's the rapid innovation that I refer to. So the field that I work in, IT and data, is always changing, period. On top of that, the working style, working from home in a distributed fashion or working remotely, is also a level of change in a time of rapid growth of the agency. So there's change in innovation and technology, there's change in the shape of the agency, there's change in the way we work. But the hardest thing for me has been to keep a mirror on myself and identify how I have to change along with all of these other things. Ultimately, I don't know if that resonates for you, but if you don't continue to question your own approach to the workplace, to interaction with people, and then continue to change and evolve your own tool yourself, then the other changes are not really possible.
I was hoping you could tell us more about the IT, information technology, and the data strategies that, at least for now, are sort of guiding NSF, and really maybe you can distillate them through the key priorities in these areas.
Sure. The IT strategy and the data strategy are very different animals. The reason for this is that the IT strategy takes you forward several years, 5 years, from the perspective of a mature practice. So the IT strategy builds on the technology foundation, enterprise architecture. So think of it in terms of talking about improvements to the tools and practices of the technology family, whereas the data strategy talks about creating a foundational capability, a new world. So the data doesn't talk as much about the technology as it talks about mention data and tools, but it also focuses strongly on governance and culture and building the workforce and the learning path, the career paths, the learning paths for the community that uses data. And everyone uses data. So it's focused more on the entire data community, whereas the IT strategy focuses on technology, moving to the cloud, securing the infrastructure, those kinds of things.
So, Dorothy, IT modernization has been a key priority for some time within federal agencies. And I'd like to explore efforts at NSF at modernizing infrastructure and systems. And could you tell us about the cloud migration that's happening or has happened at NSF, and how has it increased resiliency of IT services and applications, improved speed of deployment, and support the overall effort of recovery capability at NSF?
So the cloud has had a magical impact on all of us, whether we feel it every day or not, in that it has liberated the IT community from having to manage hardware. So it's changed our lives for sure, and configure hardware, and but it's also allowed us to scale up instantly. And so as we modernize our technologies, we no longer have a heavy legacy investment in a bunch of equipment that no longer suits our purposes. So it allows us to adapt new capabilities so much more quickly that we don't even think about it. I mean, there was a time, maybe you might remember, when software upgrades, you would be notified of software changes ahead of time. And you might even be trained in what those changes were going to entail. And then, you'd get this update. It was a big deal. And now we get updates on our phones, et cetera. Every day it could happen, or we don't even know how often these updates are happening. So we've moved from a place where modernization or innovation used to happen in steps, in big steps, and now it happens continuously. And that's true at NSF. We have some monthly releases of large changes, but we have continuous releases of security improvements, and desktop applications will change overnight. So all of that evergreen infrastructure and capability is brand new for the workforce. With respect to innovation, we also had the ability to implement new technologies quickly because of the low code, no code solutions being available, which mean, in a low code solution, you buy the infrastructure and the application and the interface all at once, as opposed to having to code all of those things. And if you think about these tools like, Salesforce or ServiceNow, you get 3/4 of the application comes to you already completed, and that's a big savings in time to deployment.
I was hoping you could sort of give us insight into any expanded development, implementation, or use of advanced technologies, artificial intelligence, AI, maybe not so advanced, but robotic process automation, advanced analytics, tools like that. How are you leveraging them at NSF?
Strategically, the RPA, we've adopted RPA. It started actually in the finance area, the financial organization, I should say, in that they had some routine, this is several years ago, they had some routine functions that were where people were taking information from one system and rekeying it into another system. So we adopted RPA over there very early on, and we have continued to grow our community of practice with robotic process automation, RPA. And so that has been very useful in a lot of ways. One, it has shown us that it moves us in this direction of distributed innovation, or what I call local innovation. And it's really getting the tools for developing simple solutions into the hands of the end users who have the problems that they need to solve. So what RPA has been doing for us is tying together steps where, for example, if a person is invited to participate in a panel and is entered into sort of a panel system at NSF, but then they need to receive an email, we have established bots, they're called automations that help tie those simple steps of business processes together. So RPA is healthy at NSF, and it's also become very important at the programming level. So where we have systems that have evolved separately, they can be tied together RPA. And also now, then that also moves you into AI. So, robotics processes like are the very most fundamental type of artificial intelligence. They're not, they're not Chat GPT. They're not complicated, and but we do cover the spectrum at NSF. So we have a group of people, local innovators, who meet every week or every other week and demonstrate their tools, the innovations they've created. The data analytics community is using artificial intelligence also in ways that we hadn't anticipated 5 years ago. They come into the NSF community with programming skills. So again, it's local innovation. It's not managed by the central IT shop, but they are building algorithms in order to derive answers from the raw data that NSF is providing. And so we have labs for that, and we're working to improve our business processes all the time.
What are, say, 3 key takeaways you'd like our listeners to leave this discussion about your agency and the role you do there?
Okay, I have thought of 3. The first one is that when I was a child, I don't play tennis now, but when I was a child, I went to tennis camp, and 2 weeks. I was miserable. But the thing that they teach you is that when you're receiving, someone's serving to you, you should keep your knees bent and be ready for the ball to go in any direction. So I love that analogy. I love the thought of keeping your knees bent at all times. Anticipate the unexpected, anticipate change, because things are going to change. So never get too comfortable. That's number 1. Number 2 is embrace lifelong learning. And this did not appear to be true when I was a kid. It seemed to me when I was growing up that you could choose a career and stick with it. I don't believe in that. My career has changed at least 5 times, completely. I never would have said 10 years ago, I did not know that data science was a practice. So it's important to always be open to understanding that the world is changing at a rate that requires us to continue to learn. So that's number 2. And the third thing is choose to believe in people. Choose to treat everyone like your best friend. And then if they prove that's not the truth, that's not the case, that you shouldn't trust them, then let that happen. But the more generous I am with myself, I feel the more I get back from people, even people who might be reluctant to share in the beginning. And in an organization like the federal government, you're not going to do anything alone. So I really choose to look at everyone as they're my friend.
I think you offered some wonderful advice there, and I want to continue on that note before we close. What advice would you give someone who's thinking about a career in public service?
Well, you number 1, you have to get joy from giving to others, giving to the nation. You have to. I was not brought up in a family. I was brought up in the 70s and 60s during the time when the nation was highly divided about the Vietnam War, and there were hippies, and I did not ever think of myself as working for the federal government. But once I found it, I realized that that's where you go if you want to make an impression, if you want to make a difference, if you want to solve really big problems. You can go to the government, go into the federal workforce, and you find a sense of nationalism, patriotism. It came to me late in life, and now I wouldn't do anything else.
This has been the Business of Government Hour, a conversation with Dorothy Aronson, Chief Information Officer and Chief Data Officer at the National Science Foundation, NSF. Be sure to join us next time for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government technology and its effectiveness. Until then, subscribe, download, and listen to the entire interview at iTunes, Spotify, or on your favorite podcast app, and as always at businessofgovernment.org.